So I think this is a fun video to make, but it's like, what makes a good technology consultant? And this could be pretty subjective and objective, but I'm going to speak from my experience, what I've seen work and what I've also seen from other people that I've worked with. So the first thing, I'm going to be breaking it down into client relationships, communication, and tech, because I wanted to focus on specifically tech consulting, because management consulting and tech consulting, they're slightly different in terms of what makes a good technology consultant. First thing, client relationship. We want to go over, try to understand the business and the client as much as possible. And I know this seems like very generic. I'm really talking about understanding the client's business and understanding what is important for them. What are key decision makers? What are stakeholders? And even what are the kind of decisions that they need to make that are important? And also even what kind of resistance to change that they might have. All of this can really affect it. And if you basically try to do like a one-size-fits-all consulting treatment for all your clients and all your industries, that's not how it works. You're supposed to be very specific, and one recommendation is that learn about their industry really well. And if you don't know about the industry, it's fine. Just keep on doing research, learn about the company, and also make sure to utilize all the resources and forums that are available at your company. Because when it comes to technology consulting, like there's still so much out there that is unknown, but really learning about it and asking questions in like forums, or when I'm talking about forums, I'm talking about either internal forums, like let's say at Accenture, it will be Accenture forums or community of practice, or maybe for example in Workday, we have Workday community. That is something you can also reach out to kind of see what other people have been doing. The other thing is also make an effort to build a rapport with your client. And I know this is like, isn't that standard consulting 101? But you'll be surprised that so many people don't actually do that. They just kind of do their job and they leave. They think that being a good consultant is just answering the right questions and doing all that. But you also need to be likable. Like, you have no clue how that's so important. I've actually had calls where I may have one person that is not so likable, doesn't really seem to know what's going on, and just seems to be intimidating in some cases. So the client doesn't actually answer all the questions the way that he wants them to do. But in the way that once they left, I actually come in and they're all of a sudden like, oh, like a weight lifted off their shoulders. And now they're like, Christine, I can ask you all the dumb questions without being judged. They'll ask a question, I'll answer it, and then they'll actually be a lot more friendlier to me for that reason, because I'm more of like a consultant, I'm a friend, than it is like someone that is just kind of judging them for everything. I want to mention a very important tip at the very end of this video on what I think is the biggest tip that makes a good consultant. And not just like tech consultant, I'm talking about good consultant. Sometimes a relationship and also consulting skills is more important than the work. So when it comes to consulting in general, that's the whole point. You're a consultant. And then after that, the work comes second. If you really don't know how to do the work, you can always delegate or learn it on your own. But it's really hard to teach how to become a good consultant. So if you are asking all these questions, but your client doesn't even understand what you're talking about, that's going to be a huge issue. You want to be able to direct the question in the right way for the consultants to be able to get the right answers to build the system, or even build the right solution for them the right way. The second thing I want to mention is communication. So communication is actually something that a lot of people, of course they know that good communication is key, but like how so? And honestly, it's really just mostly understanding what the client wants to see and how to actually understand the information. When I'm talking about the client, I'm not talking about, let's say, a company. I'm talking about the individual person you're talking to. If maybe there's a particular person that understands numbers and the other person wants visuals or demos, and maybe another person just wants to know about the impact that has on them, that's what you need to speak their language to. If you do talk about like numbers to someone that's more visuals, then they're just not going to get it and you're wasting your time, because you do have forecasted hours. If they don't understand, they're going to ask for another meeting to understand what you're talking about. Then you're going to probably do the same thing, and it's going to be just a very inefficient way of becoming a consultant and talking to them. So you really also need to read the room, because resistance to change, or maybe even like their attitude towards the concept at hand, it's very important to understand. I remember the first thing I had to do when I walked into a team meeting, when I walked into a client site meeting for the very first time, like as a new consultant, I was told to read the room. Like that was just my sole thing. Take notes and read the room. That was like a very important skill that I had to learn, because maybe, for example, I saw someone in the back just going like this, very disengaged, and they did not exactly care about what to do. So I was like, okay, you know what? And then after our meeting, I spoke to the consultant who was leading it at the time, and we were talking about that, and then we just kept on making sure next time we re-engage that person in the next meeting, so that way his input is also needed as well. It's also really key to read the room too, because that kind of helps us down the road to kind of be prepared for the repercussions. If maybe some person was not exactly engaged, there's either someone that's like he or she is either doesn't like what we're doing, or maybe just doesn't understand. So we want to make sure everyone understands and is engaged with what we're doing. The other thing is you have to have a very strong sense of persuasion, which is very important to have, because you constantly have to help the client make decisions, and ultimately they're the ones making decisions. But you also have to be the one to convince them and persuade them to make good decisions, because if like best practice is this, but they want to do that, you want to make sure that they do the best practice. And mostly it's because otherwise it's going to create you a lot more issues, and it's actually not that great for them long term. So you need to be able to be as persuasive as possible, build cases on there. Don't just say it just to say it. You have to actually build facts, impacts, all this information that they would need. Again, build that portfolio of report and information they understand, like impacts or visuals or even data, all that kind of stuff they'll need. So lastly, it's tech, and this is going to be very specific to tech. It's definitely important to know how to delegate, because there's going to be times when you're so specialized in something and then someone else is specialized in something, and I know like maybe the task was given to you, you can give it a try and everything, but you also have to keep in mind about time. If maybe you know it's going to go over time and you know this other person probably would do it a lot better because they're skilled and certified or something like that in there, try to reach out to them, and also make sure to reach out to resources around you, not just people in your team, but also people out there in the ecosystem. So like, let's say for example, mine is like Workday ecosystem. I'd reach out to Workday community, which is everyone out there, not just Accenture. And then I'd reach out to internal community practice resources as well. So maybe actual business assets where we look at diagrams and presentations and whatnot, or we reach out to a person in the ecosystem in Accenture that we can have a call and just discuss things and hash things out. Utilize the company resources to train and also try to discuss. So the other thing is understand the client's affinity with tech. There's so many outdated industries out there, like let's say government and nonprofit, or healthcare, or insurance, or financial institutions. They're not really that great with tech, but it's really important to understand who is great with tech, why are they not great with tech. Even sometimes I had a client where the general age for everyone there was at least 50 years old, so I knew that I'm going to have some issues with tech from them, like maybe how to teach them how to mute, something like that. So that's also very key to understand that not everyone is going to be like us, 20-year-old something. We also need to be conscious and aware about the other fact that they haven't exactly been technologically advanced. And the other thing is also avoid jargon. This is like probably huge when it comes to tech consulting, is that if you say anything like technical, they're not going to understand. You want to make sure to draw analogies, which is something I found really helpful. If, for example, you're talking about UI, like what the hell is UI? Oh, user interface. Oh, what's user interface? Talk about how your iPhone like is so easy to use, and you notice that the user experience is easy to go from email to text and blah blah blah. You want to make sure and mention that. And then maybe something like cloud. How do you explain cloud to a client? Well, you can mention, instead of having like a block of data and then like maybe when electricity is out, you're done. Well, I mean, while you have the cloud, it's like not up there in the cloud clearly, but at least it's going to be hosted in some other server that you can be accessed elsewhere. So that's something that is really key to use and mention. Use analogies. Don't just talk about it and assume that they'll understand. And a lot of like advanced technology consultants have this issue too, because they just say it, they don't understand that the client may not know it. But you always need to make sure, okay, will the client understand what I'm talking about? The way I like to do it is, does a 5-year-old understand what I'm talking about? You always have to think about it that way, and it will help you out a lot. And another thing is, like, when it comes to designing complex systems, don't just show them. Actually draw it out. Sometimes use a whiteboard, do a diagram, or maybe even draw a Visio diagram as well. Anything like that as visual as possible would be great, especially when it comes to documentation. This is key when it comes to, for example, you're trying to roll off the project, or you're trying to leave the project, the company is done and everything. Now it's just a matter of, now they need to train new employees that come into their own client, and then they're like, okay, well, now how do we do this? Like, our key decision maker or our key administrator just left and we don't know anything. Drawing these diagrams are really key to really helping them out in the long run. So that's something to be really cognizant about, is try to be very visual with everything that you're doing when it comes to big complex systems and how everything behaves with each other. So here's my biggest tip, and my biggest tip is have a poker face. And you will be so surprised how many seasoned consultants that I know that don't have poker faces. It shows on their face disgust, or that they don't understand what's going on. And honestly, my biggest tip is just keep nodding and smiling. If you don't understand, say it in a very nice way, like, oh, can you repeat what you just said, or can you elaborate more on that? And then that way you're getting more time to kind of process what they're talking about. But if you just straight up say, yeah, that doesn't work, and like, don't just do that. Sometimes if you just listen more, you can actually understand a little bit more where they're going at, and this kind of builds more rapport for you because it's showing that you're making an effort to learn about what they're trying to do, not just trying to shut them down. Because I know some people who do that, and I don't know, we end up cleaning up more messes than actually helping them with more solutions. So that's something that I highly recommend. You always want to master your poker face. It's really easy for me because I went to Staples. I was customer service for 2 years, working in a very prestigious white neighborhood. So just had a lot of white mothers just coming in and demanding for the best pencil on the market. And I don't know, there's like the end of story right there. But it's just so easy for me to build that poker face and really have customer service satisfaction look. But you get the deal. So that's something that I think is really important to master. Always be very cognizant too, because sometimes if you're taking notes, like look at your face. Like if you had to do an entire meeting under a mirror, can you see yourself? Can you actually think that you're doing a good job? Most of the time you're gonna slip out somewhere. Maybe you're checking your phone, maybe you're fidgeting, maybe you're like shifty, maybe you're just like, when can I have lunch? Like that kind of thing. You want to always avoid that kind of situation, because one little thing, I've actually seen this interaction before where a client noticed that a consultant was very annoyed and pissed at like this conversation. And then all of a sudden it's like, the client just went like, oh, you know what? If you don't think this is important, we just move on, okay? And then that was actually like a very important part that we were supposed to get into. This is all what I think is going to make a really good tech consultant. If you are just starting out, make sure to pay attention to these. And if you're not, if you're also out there already in the field, let me know if there's something else that I missed. I'm curious what you have to say, or maybe you don't even think that what I'm saying is the right ones, or it's all debatable. This is all objective and subjective, but this is just what I've noticed have worked. So thank you so much, and see you guys next time. Bye.